It is often said that the right to bear arms is the right that protects the rest. But we have lots of guns, and whatever you think rights actually are, our rights are, today, only conditional privileges, with increasing conditions on decreasing privileges. In other words, our rights, whatever we think they are, have become only illusions that can be swept away at any time by an ungoverned plenary government that is definitely no longer a republic. I'll argue that's because we the people didn't defend the Second Amendment, or any other amendment, or any part of any constitution, state or federal, at all. As it turns out, you get the whole agreement or you get none of it. Either it's our nation's defining design or it's just words that we left behind a long time ago. A broken contract. We're either a republic or we're not. So, sorry, Ben Franklin. Y'all gave us a republic with real citizens' rights, a limited defined government, and we threw it all away. Today's reality is that our government, that we are supposed to govern, has been taken over by foreign governments, Israel and China at least, NGOs, INGOs, corporate cartels, of course the military-industrialists, scientific technological elites, the CIA, FBI, and Malthusian eugenicist psychopaths bent on global domination. This massively corrupt government has taken over every aspect of our lives. Because of that, we're on the verge of socioeconomic collapse. So at the very best, the written words of the Second Amendment alone didn't protect us from anything. Only we the people can protect our rights, and we didn't do it. We've delegated everything away by our collective votes, and we keep doing that every election day when we've had the power of peaceful revolution all along. Boy, okay, that's a harsh start. But I think it's important context given today's subject and how our two absurd tribal puppet factions talk about it. Hi, I'm Andy Horning, author of Relighting the Torch. This is a contentious subject in a pivotal time. I've written what I think are solutions to most of our political problems, and by political entanglement, social problems, in my book. But now I'll back up a bit and dive into what the Second Amendment is really all about and how it's supposed to be used by us. And spoiler, it's not what either tribe's rhetoric says. Amendment II says, quote, "A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed," unquote. So we all really do get the part about guns, and there really is no equivocation about that. There are plenty of other sources that cite founding father quotes, legal precedents, etc., and so on, to make it clear that we are, indeed, supposed to be free to own and carry arms. But why do those who claim their right to arms always dismiss the well-regulated militia and free state parts? They're not throwaway words. In fact, I believe those words comprise the most important phrase to both the states and we the people. That's because the Second Amendment is only somewhat about personal protection and less even about fighting off an ungoverned government. We the people are, believe it or not, our government. We just don't act like it. Really, the Second Amendment is about citizens taking personal responsibility for violence. Not just personal violence and interpersonal violence, but all violence between individuals, yes. But more importantly, state and federal, domestic and foreign. The proper illuminating context is found in state constitutions. For example, the Virginia Constitution, which is not divided into clear sections and has been badly amended over the years, still says, quote, that a well-regulated militia composed of the body of the people trained to arms is the proper, natural, and safe defense of a free state. Therefore, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, that standing armies in times of peace should be avoided as dangerous to liberty, and that in all cases the military should be under strict subordination to and governed by the civil power," unquote. Article 1, Section 24 of the still excellent Tennessee Constitution is only a little different. It says, quote, that the sure and certain defense of a free people is a well-regulated militia, and as standing armies in time of peace are dangerous to freedom, they ought to be avoided as far as the circumstances and safety of the community will admit." Unquote. I hope this already raised your eyebrows a little. I like Tennessee's clear separation between militias and permanently standing professional armies, and the phrase, "a free people." Militias are supposed to be our assurance that the military industrialists and other ruling class tyrants don't make us fight battles for their desires and profits. Militias are supposed to be our republic's impenetrable defensive force, not a global empire for the benefit of only a few. Doesn't it make sense that citizen militias would be much, much less likely to re-elect warmongers and meddle with other people's countries if all of us had to leave our families and jobs to go fight foreigners we don't know on their soil? I won't detail the history, but in summary, we willingly, anti-constitutionally surrendered our militia system to build a permanent, professional, global war machine of empire. Just what our founders, both state and federal, warned us to never, ever do. But there's more in the federal Constitution. Article 1, Section 815 does grant Congress, and only Congress, not the President, the authority to, quote, "provide for calling forth the militia to execute the laws of the Union, suppress insurrections, and repel invasions," unquote. Article 1, Section 816 further grants Congress, and again only Congress, not the President, authority to, quote, "provide for organizing, arming, and disciplining the militia, and for governing such part of them as may be employed in the service of the United States, reserving to the states respectively the appointment of the officers and the authority of training the militia according to the discipline prescribed by Congress," unquote. This is considerable power over militias, but look at the delimiter, quote, "governing such part of them as may be employed in the service of the United States," unquote. That should make us think about what the state constitutions actually say about the part of them not governed by the feds, but we'll get to that shortly. Article 1, Section 10.3 provides enough confusion for today's context of, unfortunately, ignorance about the Constitution, that without reading the state constitutions, you might get the wrong idea about militias. Quote, "No state shall, without the consent of Congress, keep troops or ships of war in times of peace, or engage in war unless actually invaded or in such imminent danger as will not admit of delay," unquote. I discussed our border troubles in a previous podcast, so I won't talk further about invasions and so on, but at least not much. But if you can't keep troops in peacetime, how could a state respond to invasion or other imminent danger? Well, the answer, of course, is that all of us, from the age of majority pretty much to the age of decrepitude, are supposed to be the state militia. We're just not always in troops, and okay, we're not paid for it when we're not in muster. So we're not a standing army. We have lives to live. A republic, and only a republic, is all about both rights and duties. In a non-republic, you have no rights, but there are lots of duties. Here comes the hard pill to swallow. With the rights of self-defense by arms comes the duty of militia service. Yeah, I know. Bear with me. This is a paradigm shift, I understand, because none of us alive today have any understanding of how freedom was supposed to work. Anyway, for proof, here's Article 12, Section 1 of the Indiana Constitution, which was amended as recently as 1974. Quote, "A militia shall be provided and shall consist of all persons over the age of 17 years, except those persons who may be exempted by the laws of the United States or of this state. The militia may be divided into active and inactive classes and consist of such military organizations as may be provided by law," unquote. Now, militias as described in our constitutions, or as once practiced at least, in nations like Switzerland or Israel, are not supposed to be like the no doubt fine gentlemen who put on ghillie suits and blow up stuff on weekends. Again, the Indiana Constitution, Article 5, Section 12, lays out some details. Quote, "The governor shall be commander-in-chief of the armed forces, and may call out such forces to execute the laws or to suppress insurrection or to repel invasion," unquote. Have you raised your eyebrows yet? I mean, this is even as amended in 1984. This is still law. The state's governor is still the commander-in-chief of the militias. Maybe he's supposed to be the one wearing the ghillie suit. That's not just Indiana's constitution. All the older, better constitutions have something similar, even today. The New Hampshire Constitution, unfortunately, amended away much of all the important stuff, but Article 51 still says their governor, quote, shall have full power by himself or by any chief commander or other officer or officers from time to time to train, instruct, exercise, and govern the militia, to call forth the militia, and to put in warlike posture the inhabitants of the state, to execute the laws of the state and of the United States, to suppress insurrection and to repel invasion, unquote. Not to discuss our border issues any further, but in a republic, all states have the right and duty to repel invasions, just as we have individual rights of self-defense. Article 3, Section 5 of the Tennessee Constitution says that state's governor, quote, shall be commander-in-chief of the army and navy of this state, and of the militia, except when they shall be called into the service of the United States. But the militia shall not be called into the service, except in case of rebellion or invasion, and then only when the General Assembly shall declare by law that the public safety requires it, unquote. I wonder if the influx of Californians into Tennessee counts as an invasion. Anyway, sorry. Considering where Tennessee actually is, the Navy part may seem laughable, and the Constitution really ought to be amended to include an Air Force, or maybe even a Space Force. They'd likely have the coolest outfits. But many have been confused by the federal Constitution's Article 2, Section 2, which says, quote, the president shall be commander-in-chief of the Army and Navy of the United States and of the militia of the several states when called into the actual service of the United States, unquote. I'll repeat that last phrase. When called into the actual service of the United States. What does that mean? It means the POTUS, the president, is not the commander-in-chief of the militias until and unless there's an actual declaration of war by the U.S. Congress, and only the U.S. Congress. The militias are not federalized until a declaration of war by only the U.S. Congress. And there's not been an actual declaration of war by the U.S. Congress since World War II. So there it is. Most of us are supposed to be in the state militia, arthritis and all. Anybody over 17, unless a conscientious objector or otherwise excluded by law, is the militia. That's still constitutional today. Kids are supposed to learn weapons safety early on, and everybody plays a part in the defense of the canton, county, state, and nation. And we used to. Even more recently, when I was a kid, we still learned gun safety in public schools. Some schools had firing ranges. Mine didn't. Dang it. So now, still by law, you are supposed to be trained in the use, respect, and safety of weapons as a militia member, including the sort of weapons that make David Hogg scream, as in Indiana's Article 1, Section 32, quote, for the defense of themselves and the state, unquote. I'll repeat this because it's important. The Second Amendment is about citizens taking personal responsibility for violence, all violence. Citizen militias are much less likely to re-elect warmongers and meddle with other people's countries. Without going into how, why, or when we became a global empire of fear and aggression, we should, as quickly as possible and by big steps, immediately, nullify this destructive, globally violent, murderous mess using our constitutions as a guide. What we've got today has degraded our respect for life and has made us think it's civilized to proudly sacrifice our own children on the altar of the military-industrial complex. My God. Standing down our professional global permanent war and CIA mayhem industry would not only reduce the obvious blowback of constantly blowing up other people's countries, people, and wedding parties, it would make us more secure here at home and a lot richer. Have you looked at how much we spend on other people's wars, other people's countries, and our ruling class's lusts of power and profit? by restoring our republic, we could afford to actually keep the promises we make to both our soldiers and citizens in need. We've currently no way to keep up with the escalating costs of military medical care, civil restoration, and pensions, let alone the impending catastrophe with Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. We need to return our military force to its proper role and structure in national defense, real national defense. Kids should learn about both the danger and proper use of weapons. That would not only raise up a nation better able to defend itself, it would also greatly reduce the irresponsible, stupid accidents and unchecked violence in places like St. Louis, Detroit, Philly, and L.A., where guns are essentially illegal and therefore ubiquitous in all the wrong hands. We really need our armies out of the control of all the wrong hands. Our government sold out. You probably know a good part of our global weaponry is unleashed in service to our financial sector's fiat currency scam, the petrodollar scheme, the CIA, and the military industrialists we were warned about by a dozen USA presidents and all the smart people since our nation's founding generation. In summary, there is nothing civilized about delegating away all our violence and acting like it's right. The damage we do to our own children's lives, minds, bodies, careers, and family lives just to soothe our trembling nerves over the enemy du jour is both embarrassing and an egregious sin. You can't be the land of the free and home of the brave if you're scared and willing to give away freedom. All this has destroyed our republic and replaced it with an almighty governing deity. Putting this right would be a major part of making our government go legit at long last, with world peace and domestic prosperity a very nice side effect. Would that be so bad? Of course, we don't even need guns to make this next election day a peaceful revolution. God knows we certainly need that. And it's another part of a republic we really should want back immediately. Thanks for listening. Have a great day.